Ron, let's talk about China's 34% retaliation. The president posted this morning saying China panicked. How does China's move impact where this trade war goes next? Do we know?
We have some idea, although the president suggested late yesterday that if anyone offered a phenomenal deal, he would negotiate the tariffs away.
As in
that
TikTok?
really didn't do much to it. As in TikTok, if we got a deal on TikTok, Amazon reportedly and others were interested in buying it from the Chinese company ByteDance. But Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary yesterday, also said no country should retaliate, which was in some ways a veiled threat that our tariffs or import taxes could go up. So it's hard to see what the end game is here, Chris. There's quite frankly no rationale, no economic rationale for the way this has been put into place. It could be potentially damaging beyond what we currently consider if it goes into, as I said earlier, a full-blown trade war. But if China is going to retaliate, we could see retaliation from Japan, South Korea, possibly Taiwan, which would be unusual given that we are allies with them. And depending on what happens ultimately with Canada and Mexico, further retaliation there as well. So don't know the end game. Not quite sure what the point of this is, although the president has said several things. Number one, he would like to replace ultimately certain taxes with import taxes. He would like to raise revenue to finance tax cuts. Kind of hard to do that. It's not really compatible. This is a massive tax on the American people and certainly on American business.
I'm just hearing in my ear the Dow is down more than 1,700 points. That would be the highest level of drop, the biggest drop since these tariffs were announced, now down 1,713, 14, 22, 25. I'm going to stop looking at that right now. Let me ask you about this, Congressman, and drive this home for people. A guy named Dan Ives, he's an analyst for Wedbush Securities, released a post calling this economic Armageddon. And here's what he wrote. 50% China tariffs, 23% Taiwan tariffs would essentially cause a shutoff valve from U.S. tech landscape and in the process cause every electronic to go up 40 or 50% for consumers. iPhones in the U.S., made in the U.S., would cost $3,500 compared to $1,000 now. The stock market, as we know, is not the economy, but if prices go up anywhere near that amount, can the Republicans message their way out of this?
No, they can't. This is simply a massive tax increase by any measure. The tariff is a tax. And what did we not learn from Smoot-Hawley of 1930? These tariffs are going to reduce imports. There's no question about that. But it will also lead to a contraction of the economy. During the Great Depression, you know what? We ran trade surpluses, but did anybody care when we had 20% unemployment? No, they didn't. It was a mistake. And everybody acknowledges it. So why are we doing it again? This is not only dumb, but it is destructive. And then we got this piece of paper from the administration saying, calculating these rates that aren't even based on what the other countries are tariffing us at. So this makes no sense at all. Republicans in Congress should reclaim their Article 1 authority and insist. And they could pass a bill that would say that the president could not impose any tariffs in the name of national security or national emergencies without the vote of the U.S. Congress. That's how they need to reclaim this authority. They have to push back because this is going to cost them in the elections.
So, Ron, I also want to ask you about something else the president posted today. He said this would be, I'm quoting here, a perfect time for Fed Chair Jerome Powell to cut interest rates. And here's what Powell said today.
It's a good time to take a step back and let things clarify. That's why it's just too soon to say what the appropriate monetary policy response will be to these new policies. It is just too soon to say. We can't say with any confidence today. We're watching to see what the policies turn out to be and the ways in which they will affect the economy, and then we'll be able to act.
Maybe you heard it differently, but Ron, it doesn't sound to me like Powell is in any hurry to act.
He admitted that he's in no rush, and he said some other things as well, which was that the Federal Reserve has to analyze which event would be bigger for them with respect to their dual mandate. They're supposed to maintain maximum sustainable employment and also stable prices. So if inflation were the bigger worry and ran away to the upside because of the import taxes, the Fed would focus on inflation, which would mean raising interest rates potentially. If there were more jobs lost and a greater possibility of recession deepening, the Fed will be inclined to cut interest rates. Now, the market's making bets that the Fed may cut as many as 3 to 5 times this year. They may be a little over their skis, but it really depends on how these import taxes affect the economy overall. And so he's threading a needle here. He's not, and he admitted that he would not comment on any publicly elected officials' statements. The president has been trying to push the Fed to lower interest rates since he's gotten into office. They've done it, obviously since a little bit since last June, but they're on pause right now, waiting to see the effects of this. I mean, most of us, I think, assume a recession is going to be a more powerful input than inflation. But we'll have to wait and see, as the Fed chair said, and they're just not in a rush to make a precipitous move here.
Ron, when we came on the air, we were down 1,600. We're now 1,850. It's gone up almost 100 points since you started talking. What's happening?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. It's hard to see, any headlines that have come across.
Watch this. Are you able to watch this, Ron? It just keeps going up.
No, I'm staring right at the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting hammered here. The NASDAQ and the S&P are also down around 5%. The NASDAQ's in a bear market mode right now. So is the very small stock Russell 2000. They're both down 20% from their most recent highs. So this is the type of cascading sell-off you don't like to see as it gathers momentum moving into the close of the day. Could set up a very difficult Monday. We've had what I would characterize already as a mini crash in the market, and something larger could be in the future. But until we get clarity around the president's policies here, these markets are going to be somewhat unstable, to say the very least.
I think I said up instead of down. I think I was wishfully thinking there. The Dow now down 1,862 points. I spilled a cup of coffee this morning, and I knew that we were going to do coffee prices. I was like, Anyway, back to the serious stuff, Congressman, and this is serious. The White House has official talking points. This is not a negotiation, but then the president said the opposite.
Every country's called us. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat. If we would have asked some of these countries, almost most of these countries, to do us a favor, they would have said no. Now they'll do anything for us.
But are you open to deals with these countries if they're calling you?
Well, it depends. If somebody said that we're going to give you something that's so phenomenal, as long as they're giving us something that's good.
Something phenomenal. In fact, Congressman, he apparently spoke to the leader of Vietnam this morning. What do you think would have to happen for the president to be able to claim a win and maybe change course?
Well, if the economy keeps tanking, or the market keeps tumbling and tanking as it is, and if this economy does go into recession, which is looking more and more likely, unfortunately, maybe that will force the president to course correct. But what is so dispiriting about this whole situation is that it just seems the president has declared this preemptive trade war against our partners and allies. On what planet does anyone think that declaring a trade war with Canada and Mexico, our key North American partners, and with the European Union, which invests heavily into the United States, why do we think we won't be hurt by this? And then to accuse everybody in the world of being a bunch of rip-off artists or stealing from us. When the farmer in Nebraska buys potash from Canada, they're doing it voluntarily and for a good reason. Then that farmer from Nebraska sells his corn to the Mexicans who are buying it for good reason. Nobody's stealing from anybody here. And the president keeps saying this. It's crazy. Why are we fighting with the South Koreans and the Japanese and the Australians? We need these people. They've been good partners. And we're just basically liberating ourselves from our allies, our partners, and lower prices. So I'm just like, I just want to throw my hands in the air and say this is so unnecessary and so self-destructive.
So, Yamiche, we talked at the top about the split screen, and it really is extraordinary. You have people across the country losing their long-saved retirement money, worried about the price of groceries, worried about the price of everything, while the president, a billionaire, is playing golf and hosting a candlelight dinner at his resort. Have you heard anything from White House officials, any concern about how this looks to the American people?
Well, Chris, it's a key question, but President Trump and White House officials do not seem concerned by this split screen. And in fact, they continue to say that the president laid out his plan during the election when he was running for office and running for re-election. And he told voters exactly what he wanted to do. And those same voters that were across a number of economic situations backed this. And we, of course, have some voters who are now regretting that decision. But you also have some Trump supporters who say, look, I trust the president. He's been saying to the American people there's going to be some pain. People should brace themselves for short-term pain. Whether or not this is actually going to be short-term pain or longer-term pain is, of course, a big question here. But the president is not seeming concerned by this. And if you look on his Truth Social, as he is going after Fed Chair Jerome Powell and pushing him to cut interest rates, he's also posting pictures of himself and others playing golf, gathering at different golf events, and talking about Tiger Woods, of course, that being the nationally recognized golf champion in our country. So there's a lot of sort of doubling down on the fact that he feels like he can do both of these things. He feels like continue to do the job not only half, but a number of times from Florida, because he's gone almost every weekend to Florida and gone golfing almost every weekend of his presidency. But the president really does feel like this is what the American people voted for. And of course, we're going to continue to ask whether or not this is still what people want to see happening. But I don't see any concern here for the president feeling like he feels like he's out of touch, or that he's feeling like people who are struggling are going to be angry at the fact that he's golfing, Chris.
So in the course of this segment, the Dow up probably around 250 points, and as it approaches down 2,000. We haven't seen those numbers since the pandemic in 2020. The Dow right now down 1,926 points. Yamiche Alcindor, Ronen Sana, former Congressman Charlie Dent, thank you